So I want to open it up, first of all, to say that this is putting the media in quite the bind. They do not know what to do simply because the media wants to run a particular narrative, and that narrative is that people just hate movies that feature individuals of a certain background, and that's why The Little Mermaid is failing. The problem is that there's another movie right here, right now. It's also a family feature film, and it too features an individual as the protagonist who is of that exact same ethnicity. And therefore, the media doesn't know what to do because that narrative no longer works. And so they're beginning to have to turn on Disney, because what else are they going to do? Before we get into our own review, I do want to show this real quick. Of course, off Rotten Tomatoes, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And let's take a look real quick at how this is going. From all critics, we've got 95% right now. From top critics, we've got 97%. So that is sterling. Mm-hmm. Then off the audience, we've got all audience 90%, and verified audience 90%, all audience 93%. So those scores are lining up well, and it seems that this movie is making people very happy. So, given that, and given what we know, we've covered this on videos earlier today, it looks like, by all indications, that this is a film that is going to do quite well at the box office. It may exceed expectations, and if it does, surely it will pull away audiences from The Little Mermaid, which will create quite the dynamic for the media to cover.
Well, so, that's pretty cool.
I want to know your guys' thoughts on that in particular. What's the media going to do? And then we'll go into the review.
Well, nothing. This is the Spider-Man. What was the latest one? Far From Home? Was that the latest one that came out? That also
No Way Home.
No Way Home.
No Way Home, right? And didn't that do exactly the same thing? Like Disney was failing, then Sony drops that, and superheroes weren't actually getting tired of superhero films. Now it's kind of the same trope, except now they're saying, "Oh, you just don't like it because it's a black lead." No, it was bad writing, too long, and this is 2 hours long.
Yes, more. One. Yes.
Yeah,
very long animated film.
The pacing is much more in depth than needing a pacemaker with Little Mermaid.
No, now you just said it's a well-paced film. I do believe this is above 2 hours as well. So
2 hours, 2 hours
about that, and well-paced
about 2 hours
for a kids movie. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it's very dense. I don't know that it's going to play well with small children. I don't think this is a film for small children.
And also, I'd like to point out,
yes,
bad job on Sony for the fact that how many years later we are, and still everyone has to clarify which Spider-Man movie was the home.
No.
The Far From Home or the No Way Home. Way to phone it in on those titles there.
We don't want to do spoilers, do we, today?
No, spoiler free today, folks. You do not have to worry. We are not going to spoil the film.
All right.
And I specifically want to go to script and to Chado on this one, but here's a thought that I have on this. Sony, the deal they have with Disney is odd. For the most part, Marvel, which is owned by Disney, has all of the creative control over the MCU, etc. It seems that Sony does have some veto power. How much they use that, who knows? How much they wield of their power, soft power of that veto, who knows? But now this is 2 times where a Sony Marvel film has come out featuring Spider-Man, as Steven just pointed out, No Way Home, and now this one, Into the Spider-Verse, and pulls the Marvel universe out of the doldrums. And I think now, again, no spoilers, but I think now this is firmly in MCU territory. I can't see any way, based on what I've seen now in the film, that this is not part of the MCU. So, Script, let's go to you first. But what do you make of this, that for whatever reason, whether it's coincidence or whether it's not, it seems like if it has Sony on it, it's doing far better than if it has Disney on it. What is going on here?
Well, when it comes to the live action stuff, Sony only has their distribution. They get a huge cut of it, but it's all Marvel players that are making the home trilogy of Spider-Man, and will be making the subsequent live action films as well. When it comes to animation, that is mostly on Sony's side of things. They have, if I'm not mistaken, it is Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who are kind of hot ticket writers in the industry, and they wrote the previous Spider-Man. They did Lego Movie. They're pretty good, and they what's interesting though is that you also have the writer Dave Callahan, who is not a very good screenwriter, works a lot, turns in pages quickly, and he has an additional credit on this, meaning that he probably gave it a once-over for dialogue. And he wrote Shang-Chi, he wrote Wonder Woman 84. He is the guy that was tasked with doing what the producers and directors wanted, basically saying, we want a scene where this character does this, go write that. And that's what he would do. And that apparently seems to be the case here. But with regards to the difference between Marvel and Sony, when it comes to Spider-Man solo productions that are not going to be co-distributed or co-produced with Disney, it is all their in-house stuff. So the Spider-Verse series, the Amazing Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy, Morbius, the Craven movie that's coming out, those are all going to be Sony started and to completed productions that will have a MCU, basically like it's connected by a spider's web, essentially. Like that's how strong it is at this point.
And of course, there's
even though
also Venom out there too.
Yeah, even though Sony is doing everything they can to piggyback off the engine of the MCU to generate interest in their own projects. So they're banking on the fact that even though they're not blatantly saying this is part of the MCU, they are implying enough of it to convince audiences that this is part of it, when in actuality it kind of isn't really, because Disney's not going to be seeing a dime of profit from this film. Unlike with their live action stuff, where they do get a smaller percentage, but most of it goes to Sony because that's part of the deal. They're licensing Spider-Man into the MCU for their live action films.
Absolutely.
Can I attach something quickly to that? The way it's sort of saying that, I kind of agree with him, and maybe Pro, you can agree with me too. Is like I think Sony.
I agree with you. Oh, wait, sorry. I need to wait. Yes.
Hold on. Sorry, I have gas. But what I was trying to say is, Sony is actually in their own way doing multiverse better than what we got with Doctor Strange in this film. And I'm not going to spoil it, but Pro, you know what I'm talking about. There are certain scenes with Spot that you just go clever.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
It just works.
Well, and there are many references specifically to the Sony side of things, not so many references to Disney, although enough now that it seems that this is definitely connected to the MCU, and perhaps this will have broader impacts. I do want to get into the box office for this film, and so let's take a look at what Deadline is reporting. This by Anthony D'Alessandro and Nancy Tartaglione. They have been on a tear lately, a real tear, trying to protect The Little Mermaid, protect Disney, and typically they give just the hard, cold facts, and they're really not into the editorializing so much. That has not been true over the last few days, and we've had to be a little bit critical. But let's take a look at this. It says Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse looks to snare 150 million plus worldwide opening after 5-year crawl to screen. Now, the reason that I find this interesting is because The Little Mermaid came out to what? A worldwide 160? Is that about where it landed? All right, we'll go with that, about 160. And now, if this exceeds, based on word of mouth over this weekend, if it exceeds that, then this potentially could oust The Little Mermaid in terms of the first weekend versus first weekend. And that would be a huge deal, because this is not a film that has to make $800 million to turn a profit. It's nowhere close to that. And so the budgets are vastly different. Here's what it says. At Tuesday night's world premiere of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, there was a huge sigh of relief from the mass of animators inside Westwood's Regency Village Theater. The $100 million budgeted sequel. $100 million budgeted sequel. Let me say it again. Less than half of The Little Mermaid budgeted sequel to the Oscar-winning 2018 animated movie, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, was done having completed post-production literally just 10 days ago after a 5-year trek, and by the way, it does show, to the screen, which included a COVID delay due to the backlog in post-production houses. Starting today abroad and into Thursday in the United States and Canada, the continuing adventures of Miles Morales will see the light of day in what is expected to be a $150 million global opening. And I suspect, given how audiences are responding to this, that in fact that this number is going to increase, not decrease, and therefore potentially puts egg on the face of Disney. All right.
Good slaughter.
Can I ask a question?
You sure can.
Okay, this is mainly for Pro and Steven who have seen it, but that audience score of 90%, having seen the film, do you think that's an accurate score?
As someone, okay, I'm going to put it this way from a memer's perspective, because people who saw my Twitter, I'm going to go like this. There is enough scenes and quotes in this film to not only prop up the Miles Morales and Peter Parker is Spider-Man stuff, but some of the lines in there people are going to have a field day with. At the end of the day, there's two major storylines. They push it fantastically. There's maybe the guidance counselor, the only thing that bothers me, but the movie, I never took my eyes off. That's the best part. I never felt distracted.
You know, there's something I'd like to point out here is that Phil Lord and Chris Miller are the producers on this, and I think they're heavily involved, despite the film having, I think, 3 directors of record, which I think at that point you're kind of dealing with more of an organizational structure than you are with directors. I don't want to impugn anybody involved with this film. I've not actually looked at this, but these are the guys that got kicked off of Solo, a Star Wars story, and here we are, and everything they do.
What a great point! What a great point!
Well received, and they were stopped from making the Star Wars movie that they wanted to make.
There is no Solo in this, Jonas. I'll tell you that right now. There is no Solo.
That's not true. The script doctor said there's a Solo Spider-Man movie.
No, no, I'm talking about the. No, never mind. I'll go back to my corner and just look for my BLM button.
So, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I haven't seen this film, but I would not be surprised at all if it's better than The Little Mermaid, because I am fresh off of seeing The Little Mermaid.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And
I'm so sorry that you're fresh off of it.
Fresh off of it. So it's in my mind. And the only thing I could say that it is lackluster. And there are so many problems with The Little Mermaid that they could have and should have done better. Having cast a black actress as Ariel is actually the least of them.
Yes.
The least of them. So having seen that, and even having seen just the trailers of this, but hearing y'all talk about it and the review, it wouldn't shock me at all if this did better than Little Mermaid.
It would have been helpful if they just hired an actress of any kind.
Yes, yeah. Well, that would have been a start. But Paul, I'm curious about your take on the Little Mermaid in particular, in terms of it's not a well-made movie. And I'm curious, how long do you think the media will stick by a poorly made film that they wanted to build a narrative around it? That narrative is going to fall apart now, clearly, with this film coming out. It defeats their narrative if it does well. How long and how vociferously will they defend The Little Mermaid before they simply give up and say, you know what? It's not really that good.
I think it's a function of the preponderance of this new world order that Disney and others are trying. I don't think we've seen the end of it. Again, we've talked about ESG an awful lot here, and the audience has no idea what we're talking about. And then of course we've got the wokeism cult, which again people are really annoyed when you bring that up. So I don't think we've reached the end of that, the proselytization of a new world order in terms of how we must all behave and how everything must be inclusive. So I don't see The Littlest Mermaid in isolation.
I love that name.
Well, Paul, I see it as part of this universe of stuff, and it's going to be the weight of all that stuff collapsing onto itself. I mean, already BLM has gone bankrupt. They
bought too many mansions. They just had too many mansions.
That's what BLM stands for.
By large mansions.
Oh my God.
Oh, you also forgot.
The point is, what we're going to find over time is that people are going to slowly delete BLM from their Twitter handles because they can, and it'll be an embarrassment to include it. The pronouns will be gone because they're going to go the way of large shoulder pads.
Well, they moved those to the crotchal region at Target, I believe.
No.
I have a feeling that a lot of, no comment on anything politically here, but I think that a lot of BLMs disappeared out of people's bios about the same time Ukrainian flags went in.
Well, we can only put so many in.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. There's
my
only so many
point is that this is of a kind. And I think the press are going to change if they haven't started already once the weight of this zeitgeist starts folding in on itself.
So, Paul, let me ask you a question then. Let's go deeper on this. And I'm curious about the philosophy that undergirds it. Specifically, it seems to me that diversity, well, that's probably a good thing. Of course, everything without, beyond its parameters of healthiness can be bad, I'm sure. Even water, if you drink too much of it, becomes a negative. But what I find to be nefarious about all of this is it seems to me that these companies are using diversity, equity, inclusion, etc., as a means by which to sort of obscure that they're getting rid of meritocracy. And that is to say that if you make a bad film, well, it doesn't matter. And if you hire people who cannot create a good film, actors, actresses, writers, directors, CGI artists, etc., well, that doesn't matter either, because it no longer functions as you can't rank order the art. In other words, it's offensive to do so long as you bring in people who fit whatever diversity quota you need. And so it really is an attack on merit. Do you feel that way?
Sure. And ironically, notwithstanding universities, which I think are going to stay the course for many decades to come, because they've been planning this for decades, I think the movie industry is actually going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, because at some point they have to make money. Mm-hmm. They just don't have a choice, or they're going to collapse. They can't. Their credit is extended. They're going to have to find other sources for it, and probably other sources that don't really care about how diverse you are. The irony is that by making the movies themselves diverse, we're forgetting the fact that we need more diverse product, less diversity in the product. That's the trap we're coming into, where everything has become homogenized. And
homogenized in the opposite direction as in the past.
This is fascinating to me, this idea that Hollywood has not pivoted, because
they will.
I hope they will, and I think they will. I think that Skydance, for instance, right now, I've got my eye on them, because I think we're several productions in now where it seems like they might be maybe not the anti-woke studio, but to not be woke is to be anti-woke. They seem to be consistently delivering product that does not follow this particular ideology. They have Top Gun. We're all waiting to see on Transformers. And they're doing pretty well for themselves. The thing that this reminds me of, and your comment reminds me of, Paul, is back when Mars Needs Moms, which was like a second party Disney animation. It was not Walt Disney feature animation, but one of their studios. They made this movie and it flopped. And so John Carter of Mars, all of a sudden they said, people hate Mars, as opposed to maybe we had a bad film, or maybe this.
But John Carter was not a good film.
Well, yeah, there were some issues there, of course, but everyone turned and pivoted and said, we are going to get as far away from this thing as we can. We're going to act like it's not what we're doing, even if the movie is about Mars.
Well, there's no doubt that there needed to be diversity in directors, whether it's female, male, people of color. I mean, there's no doubt that everyone had to go in that direction, because that's just a good thing. At some point, even when I was a young thing watching television, I noticed that how come the white male lead cop always has a black commander?
There was a pattern there, wasn't there?
Yeah, like how come, like the guy, like, okay, that's cool. It's cool that his boss, who yells at him, "Give me your badge, you're done." It was always the chunky black guy. And even then I saw, this is ridiculous. At some point they've got to flip the script. Notwithstanding the fact that people just want work, but eventually it just becomes stupid. And so that is unbelievably, and that is an important thing. But as I said in a previous video, Hollywood, notwithstanding its demands for diversity, is not very diverse. You've got two groups of people, which I won't mention, and you're never going to get the Icelandic community. I talked with Paulie about it. The Latinos are locked out of the diversity equation. How come? Well, because their lobby is not strong enough. So the level of hypocrisy when it comes to pushing diversity is very huge in LA, so they have to be careful, what they're saying. So.
There was a great time for several directors to exit the industry around Me Too. I was thinking whether or not I'm going to name a name, but like Brett Ratner, by most accounts, Brett Ratner was not a talented person as a director. Maybe he and by a lot of accounts was maybe not a very nice person. Forgive me if you're watching this, Brett Ratner. I don't know you. I've just heard things. If you're moving people out, say around the Me Too era, hey, here's a great right here. Push in some great female talent right about here. Push in some diverse talent right here to replace this person who keeps getting handed these movies to do and franchises to destroy. The Last Stand probably could have benefited from giving somebody their first shot, or he got kicked off of Superman, right? Or that Hercules movie with The Rock. There were so many movies that it's like, we're just phoning this in. Yeah, go ahead. Put whoever it is right here. Give them the training wheels and let them show their stuff.
And that's the other thing too, is it's about the size of the available pool, not the people you're trying to hire. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about business, you're going, okay, how come I'm not getting people from a certain segment? You work on the size of the pool, because if you've got 1,000 people from one group and you only have 10 people from another group, where are you going to get the better talent? From the group of 1,000. Mm-hmm. So this is the logic that seems to be lost in Hollywood. And I come from an era where, man, you had to put in the hours before you were even allowed to write the bloody script. Now Disney is they are guaranteeing failure for people of females and people of color. And it's actually a tragedy for them, because maybe they are very talented, but they're getting forced into doing something way too early in their career. And I feel badly for them.
Okay, well, here's another thing that I feel is lost on them, and I do not understand why Hollywood doesn't click on this. Your average person who is a pop culture fan and who enjoys films, who enjoys movies, who enjoys entertainment, they really don't care about everyone looking like them. They don't care about diversity. They don't, in other words, they don't mind it. It's not a problem. What they want is good original stories that make sense, not just recycling characters into different races and different this and different that, and then applaud themselves. Oh, look, we're being so diverse. No, you're really not. Where are the original stories? Where are the good concepts of and then you can be as diverse as you want. Write an entire story however you want it. Is it good? Is it solid? Is it going to make money? Is it going to entertain? Is it going to benefit both the person who produced it and those that are watching? I don't know, but I have seen such a trend lately that let's just repackage something, recycle it, put a new spin on it, call it diverse, and then boom, there it is. Y'all have to accept it, enjoy it, like The Little Mermaid.
I'm picturing that scene in Jurassic Park.
Pillaging existing products and platforms is not a formula for success. My point is that they are shoving people into the front lines or over the what is it, the World War I trench.
Over the line of skirmish.
They're shoving them over the trench way too soon.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to actually be talking about that in a different domain later on in the show today. And I think that if there was a theme for this, and I wish it was more positive, but the theme that seems to be coming through on all the stories we'll cover during the show today is simply hypocrisy. These corporations in entertainment have tremendous hypocrisy, and it doesn't seem to behoove them to do that, and yet they do.